Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Dark Dry Drew here. It's Thursday, December the 13th, 2018. It's 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Los Angeles time. In London, it's 9 p.m. and it's approximately midnight, I believe, in Sydney, Australia. So thank you wherever you are listening or watching from around the world, whether you're listening to the recorded version or watching the live stream in the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group on Facebook. We welcome you and we thank you for joining us today. And this is going to be another Q&A session. We are opening the door, so to speak. It's open mic night, Drew. I mean, you're used to that as a comedian, right? Yeah. It's open mic night, and we're going to give people a chance to ask their own questions. And Drew and I will do our best to answer them and see if we can help you get into a better manifesting place. And so to get the whole thing started, first of all, Drew, how you doing? We haven't talked in a week. Are things going well for you?
Yeah, it's I actually last time we were talking about Koopa McCluck, and I did make a comic. I think I forgot to email it to you. I emailed that to you today.
Really?
So yeah, I was very inspired, and I've kind of, to some degree, just remained trying to employ what you're saying about not to think everything out and to just kind of like just start, and that's been good. The health stuff has gotten in the way a little bit, where it'll tank my mood, and then it's harder to remain consistent. But on the days I'm doing well, it's been really great, so I appreciate that.
Good for you. Hey, well, congratulations to you for implementing it so successfully. You're the one who deserves the credit. I just gave you a nudge, but you're the one who's doing it. Implementing it's not always easy, and you're doing it, so good for you.
And that's what I'm learning, is that it's a lot of the advice I was given, it makes sense. Everyone pretty much agrees on it, but it's like, it's never, you have to experience it before you're like, oh, get it now. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Abraham talks about that. Abraham Hicks. They talk about that a lot, how you really can't learn anything from a book. And that's their generic way of saying you can't really learn it from somebody else. You have to learn it from your own experience. Boy, is that true. I have the benefit. I often joke that I am the best coached person in America because I have all these life coaches as my co-hosts. But the simple fact is, even with all those coaches, I still have to learn it. And then I have to experience it in my life and apply it and then come back and feed back to them, and they give me more information and so forth. And I've learned a ton from them. Don't get me wrong. I've learned a ton from my co-hosts, particularly the life coaches, but really from all. And yet you have to do it. If you don't try to put it into practice, you don't really understand the issues. They're all theoretical until you do that. Once you do it in practice, it's like, oh, wow, this stuff it's much harder to do than I thought, or it's easier to do, or, I can do that part easily and I can't do that part as easily, or how does that part work over there? And it becomes much more meaningful when you put it into experience. And you've been doing that. So, again, congratulations. That's really, really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I feel like it's coming together.
Yeah. No, you're doing good. You're doing good. Anything particular that you can talk about, or just in general, you're making good progress?
Well, I've had this screenplay I've been working on for like 1 to 2 years, kind of on and off. And I'm a perfectionist, just kind of like, and so trying to get over that, and just, lately what I've been doing is just start writing dialogue. I don't know who the characters are. I don't know what point in the film it's at. I don't know any of that, but I know, like, just enough to start writing, and then it all comes out, and then I'm like, oh, I have a clear idea for where to take the next step. So just kind of like you're saying, where the message becomes clear once you just start doing the artwork, and the message is whatever you're dealing with in your own life comes through in the characters.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I realize. A lot of that internal dialogue that I have is interesting dialogue for back and forth between the characters, and so it's been pretty smooth. So it's been fun.
And we actually have our first question, and it's from Jamie, who is one of the moderators of the group that we're live streaming to. So and it's aimed at you, Drew, because she's reacting to what you're talking about here. She says, "How do you overcome creative or writer's block? I mean, do you have anything that you do particularly to overcome that?"
Oh gosh. Yeah, I've talked to some people before about this. So, there's like there's different kinds of writer's block. So like, for me, after my breakup and kind of, I was at a really low point in life. For me, like art then was more of a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at the beginning of my relationship, it was more like I was happy all the time.
Sure.
And so it was sort of, it was more of like, maybe still a coping mechanism, but to channel angst rather than like sadness and despair, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So the kind of the situation you're in with your own life can definitely determine how all of that will pan out. But in regards to like, let's just say you're at a pretty neutral place, the way I look at it is there's creative mode and editing mode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if I'm working on the screenplay, it's like a 3-hour film that I'm looking at. And so I've never used this many characters or this big of a film before. So it intimidates me.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Because the last thing I did was like 3 characters and it was like a standard length film.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, I'll take on this new project. And I kind of hit that wall and I'm like, struggling to come up with new creative ideas. And part of it is switching from creative to editing mode without knowing it. Because when you're in editing mode, that's to some degree the wall that I hit and that I've kind of talked to other people about where they're like, oh yeah, that's, because you will no longer start looking at like how it just feels to release all of whatever's on your mind, I guess. So like if I'm writing a scene and I'm having a certain issue in my life, that'll kind of come up within the scene. But then at the same time with hitting that wall, it's editing it like, oh, well, how do I fit the scene in to get to this part of the plot?
Right.
And like get this character's backstory. Like I want, his wife's dead and how do I channel that in here? And whenever you start like second guessing yourself or even like with the jokes, for instance, if I'm writing comedy and then I'm like, I don't know if I'm really doing a good job. Like all these jokes are kind of crappy. Like, like I'm doing so, cause especially if, and you may have found this where you'll get like an inspiration burst where, remember one time I wrote a 5-minute set in about 3 hours, which for one-liners is like absurd. Like I've only done that on maybe a couple occasions ever. Mm-hmm. And so then the rest of the time, it's like, oh my gosh, why, it's been several months and I've only written like a couple crappy jokes. And it's kind of that switching into like, when you start second guessing everything you're doing, I guess.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And kind of kill it. So that would be my, at least, my first answer. So I'd be curious to hear what you have. And then if there's a follow-up question, I can try and, I guess, clarify. But for me, that's...
To answer the question about how to overcome it, I mean, you described really nicely how it can come up. I mean, and there's a lot of different ways it comes up. But I think basically writer's block or creative block is, it comes from what you just said, overthinking it. And when we overthink it, we basically block ourselves off from the inspiration that helps us write the good stuff in the first place. So I think it's really it's almost like anything else that we're trying to manifest in life. We're trying to get ourselves into a good feeling place, right? And when we're in that good feeling place, then we're trying to be as clear as we can about what it is that we want. Well, if what it is that we want is inspiration about what it is to write, as strange as it may sound, I think probably the first thing to do is to quiet the mind and just kind of listen for a little bit. Listen to what's going on inside. And just, be with it. And if some sort of angst comes up, sit with it, pet it, say you're everything's okay, and then let it go. And probably the next thing to do is kind of like what you started to do. Like we talked about this last week and you implemented it, of instead of thinking about it, instead of trying to figure it all out in advance, just start doing it. So just start writing. Don't worry about what's coming out of the pen or out of your keyboard or whatever it is that you use for writing. Just start writing. Don't worry if it makes any sense. Don't worry if it's any good. Just start writing. Because I think it's kind of like journaling. Journaling is something that deliberate creators often use to get their thoughts out about what it is that they want in life. Well, you can also do what they call, I think they call it auto-journaling or automatic journaling or automatic writing. And that's basically you just write whatever comes to you. You don't think about it, you don't analyze it, you just write. And when you do that, the stuff comes up and it comes out. And the stuff that comes up and comes out is the stuff that is you. It's the stuff that you've been dealing with deep inside that, or maybe you haven't been dealing with deep inside, right? And that's why it's coming up.
Yeah.
So basically, by going through that process, you unblock. And as you unblock, then it becomes easier to write the stuff you really did want to write.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that's, and I guess a complementary thing to that would be like you're saying, you got to clear your mind. Meditation's really good for that.
Mm-hmm.
Where I remember I was trying to write, so when I was in like a really dark place, I wrote a whole screenplay in a month, but,
Wow.
there was one night where I was writing this scene, and as I was writing it, I could just feel that it wasn't right. And so I went and I sat down, and I hadn't really been big on meditation. I'd started like trying to do it a little bit here and there, but I sat down, and I think it was maybe like 15 minutes. And then I went and I wrote that scene afterwards, and the difference was just incredible. Like, it took it from being an awful scene that would have tanked the film to now, like, it makes the film. So I'd say definitely clear your mind, and like you're saying too, if you are dealing with some emotion or something in your life, like you can't suppress it, it'll seep out slowly. Like you'll catch it in your art, if it's whatever emotion. And so I think a lot of people have been, especially in America, kind of trained to like suppress emotions. I know I always was. That's been like my new journey.
Right.
But yeah, definitely, like, if you suppress your emotions, that'll kill it too. So maybe you're like, you want to just have a good time, but you're like depressed inside. Like, find alone time and just, like you're saying, well, just literally channel all of that into anything. And that was the one that was weird for me, is like, I'm trying to write this one screenplay, right? Then I'm like, oh, like, I'm not feeling inspiration for that. So just write anything. So what I started with was, a note file on my phone. I just wrote all my thoughts. Well, I'll write the advice. So if Walt gives me advice, I'll put it on there. And if I have like thoughts on my own, I'll put them in the thoughts folder. And then, I was writing like a couple thoughts down, and then all of a sudden this line popped into my head. And I'm like, that's not just something I'd say. That's something that this character I'm writing would say. Like, that's nice. Like, I know the character's essence of each of these characters, but I don't know anything else about them. You know? So then I just wrote like for half hour straight, and then accidentally deleted half of it. I don't know how that happened. And then tried again.
It was law of attraction, most likely. The universe was backing you up, saying, okay, you really don't need that section, so we'll just get rid of it.
Yeah, and that happened again the other day, where I wrote this huge thing and then it deleted it, and I need to just start writing by hand again. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it just like glitched, erased half of it. But I think, like you're saying, it is kind of like, it's like, go try again. Like, you were on the right track, but like, go write that part again, because it's like you're mining for gold, and you're like, all right, I'll move on to the next section, and the universe is like, no, go back.
Yeah.
You were so close. And I did, and I went back and I made a few other realizations, and I wrote some lines that I really liked. Then I sent it to, I've been using, for me lately, what's helped is on Reddit, which is a site where you can like talk to people in like a niche community. I'm a INTJ personality type. So like by nature, don't really relate to most people, had to build empathy and emotion. So talking to all those people has helped me understand myself. It's like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, I'm not, all of these feelings aren't like, oh, Drew, like you're a weirdo. It's like, no, that's literally my brain. So that kind of stuff was like a good start. So if you have certain issues in your life, like this group, I think is a great starting place as well. Mm-hmm. Because everyone here is for the same reason, right? We're all like, we want our lives to be better. We're all dealing with different things, come from different backgrounds, but kind of finding that common, like, oh, okay, like, here, I've been through this before. I know it's different, but that'll help you. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of stuff can help with the creativity, because I know that just changing the art form from me writing screenplays to like writing to help other people, or drawing the Cooper McCluck comic.
That's right.
I did some digital art, and I'm working on like a collab with my friend. She's a voice actress. So like switching it up and getting more perspective. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That's good.
Yeah. The more whenever you enter the abyss, the more, you ask a question to yourself, and you have to search around in the fog. And once you clear some of that fog, you'll have your answer, and then a whole bunch of more questions. And so it gets deeper and deeper as you go. But the more you begin to understand yourself, that'll definitely kind of add to the creativity. And then I think the natural thing is that we kind of have the highs and lows in life where you'll hit a plateau or something, and it's like, okay, like, let's start re-examining things, and that can also help with kind of getting through the wall or the writer's block,
right,
and kind of re-examining, okay, why am I feeling this? So, I mean, there's so much to it. Like, this is, it's still all kind of new to me in some regards even.
Absolutely. This, by the way, is a Q&A, so if you have any questions about law of attraction or being a deliberate creator or whatever, and you're listening to the live stream on Facebook's Law of Attraction Changed My Life group, by all means, put your questions into the comments section, because we're checking them regularly. I'm checking them as Drew and I are talking here, and we'll include your questions we're going to include as many questions as we can, hopefully all of them, in the podcast. I saw that Aaliyah said she had a question, so go ahead and post your question, and as soon as you got it posted, I'll be glad to bring that in. Jamie had a follow-up, Drew, to what she wrote. She said, and we kind of addressed it halfway, I think, but we should probably address it all the way. She says, do you have a favorite way to break through into or facilitate creative flow state? And you were kind of talking about that a bit, but I mean, do you have a favorite way? Is there like your favorite preferred method that you use?
To do what?
To break through when you're trying to facilitate being in that creative flow state.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, I can tell you what I think. As you're thinking about your answer, I can tell you what my answer would be. My answer would be that it's just like anything else in law of attraction. You got to get yourself into the happy feeling place. If you try to, anyone who tries to attract anything when they're not feeling good, the odds of you attracting what it is you actually want are not in your favor. You're much more likely to attract something you don't want because you're not in a good feeling state. But when you're in a good feeling state, that's when you do your best attraction. That's when all the good things start to happen. That's when all the synchronicities happen. That's when life just seems to flow. You're in the groove. You're in the vortex, and so on and so forth. Well, the same thing's going to be true for creative inspiration. You're going to get your best creative inspiration when you're in that happy feeling place. So that would be my answer. Get into the happy feeling place, whatever way you have to do it. And if you haven't developed a series of methods for doing that, then now's the time to start developing them. Although I know Jamie has. Jamie's actually an expert at this, so I'm sure she already has. But
I guess, I agree with what you're saying. For me, there's been some different. I think all the times that like I've done my best artwork were either I was super happy or super sad. If I'm like in between, it's more challenging for me. I haven't really figured all that out. I think part of it is just sitting down and being more consistent. 'Cause every time I do sit down, like the first 10 minutes is just garbage. I imagine, if you imagine like creativity is like a pipeline, and if you don't use it for like one day, it'll get a whole bunch of gunk. You've ever seen like a pipe with all this like nasty stuff in there? You gotta like clear it out. And once you clear it out, that's like your first 10 minutes. So if you're like painting, just like do whatever, just like mess around.
Yeah.
Like you're writing like I'm doing. I just kind of like spew random dialogue, and then some of it I'm like, that just doesn't, like that's too modern. Like this screenplay I'm writing's in the 1800s. I can't use that. And that's my brain switching back into editing mode. And it's like, no. Forget about that. Forget about all of the roadblocks. Cause I think if you, so if you do meditation and mindfulness, you'll start to realize the roadblocks. And this is for all of life, but, and that, Walt and I have talked about that, the negative self-chatter and the mirror exercises and stuff. But in terms of like creativity, I'll have thoughts like, like I can't have all of these characters be like kind of dumb. Like this guy needs to be more like a psychopath.
Right.
And then, I'm trying to like alter the characters' personalities, as I'm writing. And I think it's better to, just everything you're writing, just to write it all. And then, or whatever art form, right? Just like crank them all out, whatever you're feeling. And then afterwards, once you're I mean, generally I can go for a few hours. If I have like an insane manic binge, which I'll get, I could be like 6 hours of whatever. But at the end of that, it'll be like, whoa, like I have depleted my energy. Now, some people say go look back like a month later or, plus or minus. I do that sometimes. It depends. Like if it's this screenplay is never going to happen if I don't keep sitting down. So like I'll go back and look at it a few days later, or I write on my phone, I write in a binder, I write in the notebooks. The notes are everywhere. So I can kind of go, and then also I'm back and forth between my mom and dad's house. So like I have different access to like the things I've worked on.
Right.
So maybe if you switch it up between the stuff you're working on, I know that kind of works for me where it like forces me to be creative about something else. Where I'm like, I just don't feel like writing that tonight. Like I know for me when I'm writing screenplays, it's like I'm there in the room and I'm like a fly on the wall, which is intense. When it's like a dark scene, the one I was writing last time was like a failed pregnancy and and with her dying and stuff. And to me it was like draining because it was like I was there in the room.
Yeah.
Except you have this on screen, it'll be a 5-minute moment. But when I'm writing it, it's like it takes an hour and a half to write this 5-minute scene.
Absolutely.
Those kind of times, it's like just keep on pushing through, and then you can, whatever comes out, let your emotions keep going. Because that was the tough thing too, is it was like emotionally charged.
Yeah.
But then by the end of it, I'm like, okay, like I finished that. I can now where do I take the scene from there? Because I'm like, okay, how do I fit this in with the rest of the film? So that kind of stuff. You can come back to that. But if you'll hit the wall and that writer's block instantly if you start thinking about editing whatever you're doing.
Yeah,
so.
Sure. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And it also, what you're talking about reinforces the idea that it really is important, no matter what it is we're doing in life, no matter whether we're deliberately attracting something or we're just trying to have a successful experience with something that we want to do because we want to do it. It's so important to be in that high flying, that good vibration, that good feeling place, because that's where the best stuff comes out. And that's where we're able to not only have the stuff come out, but writing a scene like that one, when you're starting from a good feeling place, it's so much easier to keep your defenses up so that it doesn't tear you down as you're trying to write the darn thing. You can actually do it with some perspective,
Yeah, you have to still like enjoy it, and it has to have some sort of meaning to you. You don't have to know what the meaning is in the moment,
right?
But just sort of channeling whatever you're feeling and I guess it's really about being honest with yourself.
Sure.
If you're trying to do an art piece and you're like, oh, I want this to be like if you have a plan for what you want it to be, like slash it down to 20%. So you have now a vague idea of the direction you want to take it. Because I am with my brain, I always work in like problems and solutions, plans and systems. So for me with the work, I'll have a plan. So I'm like, okay, this is a Western horror and it's this big, guys on a journey kind of thing. So that's like the vague idea. But then if I, like Walt and I were talking about last time, when I'm planning it out way too much, and I'm like, okay, this has to happen here and here and here, that'll bog me down. And that's why it's kind of like lagged for quite a while.
Sure.
So definitely sort of getting that, and you have to find your own personal balance too, because it's not something that, that I can be like, oh, this is the answer. And you're like, wow, I've solved it all. Like, you are the answer. You have to find your own balance. And that's what's I think that's a big thing when it comes to people who actually make use of advice, is a lot of people just want to hear the answer, but it's like, you are the answer. Like, they're just pushing you. And they're, like you're saying with me earlier.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good perspective. You are the answer. I like that. Write that one down. But, I like that. Jamie, first of all, said great feedback, so she really appreciates what you had to say, Drew. That was great. We are taking questions, so anybody who has a question, feel free to post it if you're listening to the live stream in Facebook's Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. If you're not listening to the live stream, you can still send questions in. Probably the easiest way is just send it to me via email, and we'll address it the next opportunity that we have in one of the upcoming episodes. My email address is walt@loatoday.net, and You can, if you're trying to also reach one of the co-hosts, just send it to me and I forward it on to them. But one way or another, we'll be glad to address whatever your question is, even if you're not listening to the live stream. And if you are listening to the live stream, post your questions. Let's see, we've got a couple of things being posted. We've got a lot of conversation going on. We've got the conversation going behind the scenes here, Drew, so we're doing a good thing. People are just interacting all over the place. Yeah, it's really good.
What? I'm to help.
One thing we didn't have, it isn't really a question, but one of the members came on and expressed how she was having a really rough day. She said, bad day, low vibration. Can't keep my mind off my boyfriend who cheated on me. Well, yeah, I could understand why that would be hard to keep your mind off that. But it also brought to my mind that plus the question that Jamie raised and what we were talking about with your breakthrough earlier. They all dovetail, I think, to one key common thing. And that is we need to have strategies in place that we can just rely on and go to, like a little go-to thing to do whenever we're not feeling good so that we can climb out. Mm. And this is something Patty Framo, who has been doing the Monday afternoon podcast with me, and I'm going to miss her dearly. She's actually having to move on and do some other stuff. I've got a new co-host who's going to be starting with me on Monday. We're actually going to be moving that. This is like a heads up, by the way, to everybody. The Monday afternoon podcast is going to become a Monday evening podcast. So Mondays it's going to be at 8 p.m. New York time. That's 5 p.m. Los Angeles time, and I believe that would be, let's see, that would be, what is that? Whatever it is, 1 a.m. London time, I think it is, something like that. I have to calculate it all out, but the point is we're trying to make it available so that more and more Americans can actually contribute, because we get lots of people around the world, but the time frame is most optimum in the evenings here in the U.S. for Americans to tap in, and we want to get more American involvement. So look for us to do that Monday podcast going forward at 8 p.m. Shelley is the name of the person who's going to be doing it with me. She's really interesting. She's a housewife and a mother who's been using law of attraction in their family and had some interesting results that have come out of it. But anyway, that's a long way around, because what I was really trying to say is what Patty taught me is the importance of maintaining a list of things that you can go to quickly whenever you are in a not good feeling place. And what she actually recommended is just write a physical list. And I actually have mine. It's posted on the wall. It's a list of 16 items. And they're all things that I like to do that make me feel better. So if I'm depressed, if I'm angry, if I'm frustrated, if I'm feeling overwhelmed, whatever it is, and I recognize that I need to feel better, I go to my list and pick one of the easiest things, whatever looks easiest to me, and just do that activity. It may be just something as simple as taking a walk. That's one of the items on my list. Just take a walk, get out into nature. But something to shake it up, because the one thing you don't want to do is go through your entire day feeling, oh, I'm having such a bad day. Oh, I'm having such a bad day. Oh, I'm having such a bad day. Because that becomes one of those negative spirals and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. It's easier when you catch it early and recognize, uh-oh, going down that rabbit hole again, going down that negative spiral. I got to reverse it and go to your list and find something to do. And if you aren't sure what to put on your list, maybe you haven't developed processes that you do, daily meditations or whatever, and you haven't figured out what works for you. Get the book Asking It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks, or Abraham Hicks. That book at the back has a list of 22 processes, as they call them, or exercises, things you can do to improve how you feel. And they even grade them based on, this particular process is good if you're feeling depressed. This particular process is good if you're actually feeling better than that. Maybe you're feeling, just bored or something like that. So it grades them, and that way you can pick which one matches most closely to how you're feeling and then do it. And there's some really good processes in there. One of my favorite go-tos, well, meditation is actually one of the processes, and that's one that many people understand and can do fairly easily. One of my favorite ones is called Wouldn't It Be Nice If? And the way you do Wouldn't It Be Nice If is you start a bunch of sentences with Wouldn't it be nice if? And then you list at the end of it one of the things that you want to manifest in your life or make an improvement on or something like that. So let's say you're unemployed and you want to get a new job. Well, wouldn't it be nice if I had a new job? And wouldn't it be nice if it was with the employer I really wanted to be employed with? And wouldn't it be nice if I got a pay raise compared to what I'm currently getting paid or what I used to get paid? And wouldn't it be nice if it was like 5 minutes from my home so I could just walk there if I want? I mean, you just do this. Wouldn't it be nice if over and over again? And when you do that, you feel better because you're focusing on the thing that you like, on the thing that's important to you, or maybe multiple things. It can be multiple things too. So I recommend highly to everybody, create your go-to list, your list of things you can go to when you're not feeling good. And just that way you can pick an item. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to figure out like, oh, geez, how I'm going to climb out of this. You just go to the list, do one of the items, and you'll start feeling better right away. It's a really effective tool.
Yeah, you taught me that a few weeks ago, and I have that list.
Oh, you did? You made one up. Good for you.
Yep.
What's your number one on the list? I mean, if you were feeling really, really down right now and you needed to pull yourself out and you went to the list, what would be likely the very first thing you'd pick off your list?
Probably holding Mimi if I was like at my house.
And Mimi is
she's our miniature dachshund.
Miniature dachshund. Okay, so your pet.
He's like a plus. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 is bleak nothingness, 2 is heavy despair, 3 is severe depression, 4 is like not going well pretty seriously, and then 5's like not well, 6 is like slightly above neutral. So you and I were talking about it. You don't even want to consider the neutral because neutral is like bad. So Mimi on that list would be like a +1 unless I was at a 1. If I was at a 1, it'd be like 0.5. So if you like animals, if you don't like animals, then you're on your own. But for me, holding her is at least a +1.
Yeah.
Especially because she's funny. So if you have an animal with very loving and a lot of personality, that's always a good mood boost.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of studies that show that people who have pets are healthier, live longer lives, live more satisfying lives. So it makes total sense what you're saying. I agree with you.
Yeah. Yes. So pets, but there's other, like you're saying, where you gotta adapt them. So like if I'm, like it's been really cold lately, so I haven't felt as inspired to write, because especially, I think Walt and I talked about before, with all my new diet stuff, I'm like 45 pounds lighter than I was, like a year ago. And I wasn't ever like obese or something. Like now I haven't been eating enough lately. I'm almost gaunt. I'm like 140 for 5'6" male, which is kind of like, I should be like 145, 150. So, for me, I need to like be cautious of my energy levels. It's like yesterday I didn't eat enough because I'd gone to a concert the night before and I had a flare up because I've got IBS. So like my stomach got wrecked and, so yesterday I was in a terrible mood. And like terrible mood to me is like, it's just not good. It's like this well of darkness. And so, I was like, Mom, I need your support right now. Like I realized I'm like, I just need to eat something. And so I went and I made banana pancakes and that sorted out like half the problems. And from there it was someone that that was a support system, right?
Yes.
And then after that, it was like, I'm going to hang out with a friend. So, like, sometimes it's procedural. Or, like, if it's just that energy boost because it's so cold, I'll be like, okay, I just need to do 20 push-ups, and that'll, like, send me a quick surge of energy. You know, so kind of figuring out, like, specifically which ones work for whichever need, and then using them like in a sequence. So, like, okay, I'll go hold Mimi. And her warmth and her funny smile and how she does goofy stuff will make me laugh. And then I'll go, wrap them in a blanket. And then I'll look at some pictures that are funny. And then after that, go make a cup of like herbal tea or even just drink water. Honestly, I've enjoyed water more than like pretty much everything else lately. That took me years to get to that point. So like figuring out your own self, and using those, I called it mood boost, and it's just a little notepad on my phone of ideas. And Walt told me that, and it's a great idea. So,
you've been using it quite a bit then. That's good.
Yeah, just kind of like when you start to just incorporate it into the everyday rather than using it as like something like a fail safe, I guess, then it's when it like really seems to, like, obviously it'll always work as a fail safe, but using it as like an everyday thing of like, okay, I need to like stagger a couple things throughout the day. That's a really kind of approach for me, at least.
Yeah, well, I think it's true for anybody. And by the way, I especially like the example of playing with a pet as a way to get yourself into a better frame of mind. Particularly, anybody who's a pet owner knows that every single one of them, dogs, cats, whatever they are, every single one of them has their own unique personality, their own quirks, their own characteristics, and those alone can just get you laughing, even when you're in a really, really bad state. So, I mean, I love your, and I agree with you. I mean, one of my items on my list is to pet my cats, either one of them, especially Joy. Joy has a female name, but he's a male cat, an extremely long cat too. One of the most, I mean, cats are notoriously independent, right? This guy is really, really independent, but he's independent to the point where literally he will not accept any suggestion you make. He wants to do it his way. He wants to figure it out his way. He'll go out of his way to make things difficult for himself so that he can do it his way. And it's comical to watch because, you say, would you like to go outdoors? You open the door for him. Would you like to go out? And he'll look outdoors, and he'll walk in the room, and he'll walk to the other room, and then he's back at the door again. Like, well, all you have to do is walk outdoors. He just has his own routine, But the same cat... The same cat, he goes outside, and we call him the ambassador to the neighborhood because he will go up and introduce himself to every single neighbor we have. And it's a fairly, we're apartments, so we're all fairly closely spaced to each other. And everybody in the neighborhood knows who Joy is because he comes up, he rubs up against them, he wants to be petted, and so on and so forth. Same cat, but different circumstances, and he just behaves differently. If he's got a whole bunch of new people around, he loves them. If he wants to figure out what he wants to do, he has to go all the way around the circles in order to figure out how to get there. It's funny.
It's awesome. Yeah, animals are just amazing.
They are. They're great.
If you don't have one, you should try and find one that you can fit into your life.
Well, in this case, they found us. They were abandoned by the people who lived across the street from us. We didn't know, but they were abandoned when that family got evicted from their home. Those and plus 2 other cats. And at the time, this was in Virginia, we inherited 4 cats when we had a lease that said we were not allowed to have any pets at all. So it was a little bit uncomfortable from that perspective. We ended up 2 of them we had to end up leaving behind. We couldn't bring all 4 of them, and those 2 ended up getting adopted out. And then these 2 we brought with us, and it was great. I'm really glad they found us. We've had them for 5 years now, and they've really enriched our lives in immeasurable ways. So, yeah. Yeah.
It's totally, because that's something I've been dealing with, where it's like seeing your pets age, and then it can be kind of sad where you're like, wow, they're not going to be here forever. It's better to have them there for any amount of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Especially the abuse out there.
I mean, we don't even know how old these cats are. We have no idea. I mean, if I had to guess, I'm guessing they're about 10 years old each. I think we got them when they were about 4 or 5 each. But how do you know? There's no way to know, Yeah. So when you look at it that way, we don't know how long we're going to have them. We don't know what their lifespan should be with us because we don't know how old they were when we got them. So it's all the more reason to do what you suggested. That is, just enjoy them day by day. Everything's always in the now, which is what it is for them anyway. They always live in the now. So, yeah.
And I see Mimi, she does whatever she wants, whenever she wants. And I'm like, that isn't happening.
It is. Yeah, it really is. By the way, this is a Q&A. We're encouraging people. We aren't getting a lot of questions, although we've had a couple good ones. But we're encouraging people, ask questions. It can be something that you're having trouble with. Now, this presumes, of course, you're listening to the live stream. If you're listening to the recording, it's not quite as easy. But if you're listening to the live stream, and we got a number of people listening, I can see it, by all means, ask questions or just share stuff that's going on in your life, that interesting things. Maybe you've manifested something that was really cool, whatever it is, and we'll include it and make it part of the conversation here. But the primary purpose here is this is your opportunity to become a part of the conversation by commenting. So please do comment because we love it. It makes it so much fun too whenever we get a chance to answer someone else's question and try to help them out a bit, because it's fun. It just feels good. You get to help somebody else, you know? So, I also want to make sure I get in the promo announcements before I forget. So let me do that too. If you're not yet a subscriber to the podcast, because this is a podcast that we're recording here, please become one. And it's pretty simple to do. The instructions are in most places where this is posted. If you're in the live stream group, for instance, just look in the description and you will find links for both Apple devices and for Android devices. Just click the one that's appropriate for what kind of device you have, and it'll walk you through the steps of becoming a subscriber. And then, of course, be sure that you listen to the episodes that come through. You'll get notified anytime that we put out a new episode. It'll automatically download to your phone, and just as simple, you'll be a subscriber. And then as you're a subscriber, make sure that you're also letting people know on social media, whether in Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, LinkedIn, whatever it is that you use. Share the fact that you're listening, because other people need to get their daily doses of happy too. Our goal is really to make the whole world happy. And that sounds like a strange goal. Well, it sounds like a nice goal in one sense, but it sounds like a strange goal from an LOA perspective until you realize that all of our best manifesting happens when we're in our happiest place. But our theory is if we can get the whole world feeling happy, we're going to have an amazing world, because people are going to be manifesting stuff left and right. It's going to be just incredible. And, so that's the goal. So please share with other people so they can get that same advantage that you got when somebody shared with you, because that's probably what happened. Somebody shared with you, you saw a post that somebody else put in and discovered the Law of Attraction LOA Today podcast that we're doing. So, please continue to share, because that sharing makes all the difference in the world. So let's see. What do we have from... beginner books. People are asking. January's asking about beginner books about the Law of Attraction. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what. Did you have any particular favorites that you like, Joel? Sorry, Drew. I talked to Joel this morning.
Favorites for what?
Learning Law of Attraction, learning how to be a deliberate creator, learning how to manifest what you want to manifest in your life.
Well, so I was really negative for a period of time a few months ago. Just graduated college, was still coming to grips with the end of my relationship, still kind of am. Best friend moved to Europe. All my other friends at the end of college, they all moved back to where they came from. So I come back home. Most of my friends that I came back home to changed. The ones that I'm seeing now, which are about 2 people, have matured greatly. The rest kind of not so much. They kind of went backwards almost, were more homophobic, racist, a lot of that kind of stuff.
Wow.
So I for me, it was like, I'm not going to be, I remember because my mom broke down one day and she was crying and she said, I can't be around you if you're going to be like this. You're becoming toxic. And so I needed to pull myself together. I need to fix this. And that's around the time that I found Walt and all this stuff. And my mom and I had talked about the Law of Attraction before, but I had to, so for me, my personality type, INTJ, I didn't have any empathy as a child, not because I was like a sociopath or something, but because my brain processes things purely in terms of logic and reason. So I had to build all of that empathy over years. And in the past 2 years, meeting people from so many different walks of life definitely bolstered that empathy and kind of made it really come out, because it does exist. It's just not, I don't start out with like this kind of personality type. So for me, what helped the most was learning. I'd say the start would have been like this podcast and meditation, and then learning gratefulness.
So not so much a book as the podcast and just going into some deliberate practices.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have to like examine your life and figure out what's going well, what's not, and then like we're saying, focus on the things that are going well and figure out how to change it. So like the things that, cause in my opinion, a lot of people will make their problems seem external, or they can blame it on someone else. And I think that the majority of people's problems, like 90%, is their own fault or their parents' fault in the way they raised them. Because all parents make mistakes. Even the best parents are gonna cause you to be a certain way, whether it just be, I mean, like my parents' age range, they grew up in a range where, and this is for a lot of Americans, where men suppressed emotions. Emotions were weakness. So I'm just now at age 22, like starting to be like, okay, I need to get in touch with my emotions or I'm going to be messed up for a long time. And so, like gratefulness and meditation and just kind of like, focusing on what's good for you. And then the really tough one, and this kind of was a bummer and at first, is cutting out toxic people from your life.
It's important. I agree with you.
Yeah, you can love them, you can care about them, but you've either got two options. You can try and, like if you're like, I gotta break up with you, like this is gonna kill me. And then they're like, okay, I'm gonna work on changing. Like if you'll give me the chance, then that's your option. But otherwise, a lot of people, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this isn't you. You're becoming an evil person. I had to cut people out, and because the law of attraction is to me, it's a mix of aligning all of these different aspects of your life. So if you want one goal, if I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a comedian. Well, there's a lot of stuff I have to change. I can't, with my medical issues, I have to adapt to a diet that's going to be really tough and really challenging for me. But in doing that, I will become better. I will feel better. I will emanate more love and happiness and, approaching everyone from a place of kindness and always trying to help others in any way I can.
Sure.
So all of that kind of stuff then starts to like build up exponentially to where, like if hearing me talk now, 3 months ago, you would have been like, this is a different person just 3 months ago.
Well, good.
Enormous difference. So, yeah, that's it. If you have, I guess, more clarifying questions, I could try and add to that.
That's pretty good, I would say. I mean, I would add, in terms of actual books, for me, the number one book to go to if you're a beginner is The Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham by Esther and Jerry Hicks. There are a lot of beginner books out there. There are a lot that are very, very good. I rank that one as number one. And I do so because it is the most thorough understanding presented of any of them that I have read. The presentation is so clear and so well laid out that you can understand the whole theory in one book, which is a really rare thing. So that would be my go-to. Start with that book there. I'll get a link to it and I'll post it in the chat. But beyond that, there are a lot of good books out there. In fact, we're getting some people recommending some. Deidre was recommending anything that's Neville Goddard, and I'm not sure I would start with Neville. You might start with Neville Goddard if you have a strong Christian religious background, just because he uses a lot of scripture, and so that might make it easier for you to start grasping the concepts the way he presents them, because he takes scripture and uses it a lot in his presentation. The only thing you want to be a little careful about is that Neville has his own way of defining key concepts, and they are different from the way your traditional religious priest or pastor or minister will typically define them. So Neville's really good, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody. I'd recommend it to somebody who already has a very strong Christian orientation and who wants to kind of follow that same kind of path. That's going to be a good route for you to take. So in that sense, I agree with you on that one, Deidre. Nasha was suggesting As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and she also mentioned Jack Canfield, who has a number of different books. I'm not sure which book she was recommending for him. Deidre also recommended a book by Lynn Grabhorn called Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. I've heard of that one. I haven't actually read that one, but it's certainly a title I've heard. So there are a lot of good books out there, for sure, and a number of them are good beginner books. The Secret, that's where a lot of people start. But for myself, my own recommendation, if you want to have a good book to start with and you had to pick only one book, Law of Attraction, The Basics of the Teachings of Abraham. That you can't go wrong with that one because it's such a clear presentation. And let's see. Oh, and Jamie had a follow-up. She was following up about the questions we were answering before regarding writing and writer's block and so forth. Her latest questions, she had two of them. How much time, Drew, do you usually spend creating in any specific genre, and how frequently do you switch genres? Is this change inspired by your state of mind?
Oh gosh. So like when I was in my relationship was second year of college, so about 2.5 years ago, I was doing tons of stand-up comedy because at that point in my life, that was what I needed. And that was kind of the way, that I cope in the world. Like for me, like creativity has been my essence since I was a kid. Like a lot of my friends stopped playing with toys early on. I was always playing with toys up until like seventh grade.
Wow,
Mainly
really?
then because of that peer pressure. Because to me, I'd see a film and then I'd go home and I'd get out my toys and I'd like write my own films based on that film. So I never really realized this until recently that I've always been super into filmmaking. But like in high school, it was Breaking Bad, and then the Coen Brother films inspired me to get into writing, and so I was writing a novel, and I was doing that, and I was writing all the time, and then something will come into your life and just like it beat the crap out of you. And for me, that was school and a bunch of other stuff, and then that got kind of tanked, and I didn't finish the novel, but I wrote 70 pages, and then the next year I felt that I really want to go back and do that again. So I picked it up, and I think I wrote like another 70 pages in a month as like a 10th grader, which was pretty good considering I'd never done that before. But then it kind of fades, and then I got into art, and I was drawing a bunch, and I was drawing every single day.
Wow.
But I wasn't like, I've always been like self-taught in pretty much all the art forms, which is good and bad. I'd say that it's bad because okay. So, at UC Davis, I took art classes, and my opinion of art is you can't teach art, you can teach technique. You have to become an artist yourself. And I think that some people just are or aren't.
Something like being a deliberate creator. You have to experience it. You have to just do it.
Yeah. And it's, in college, the problem I saw was that you get I made this short film, and I used the color red a lot in it, and the film was kind of me handling my depression and stuff at that time. And this chick in the class who, she was a curator for some of the galleries, and she was like high up in the art department, and she's like, you can't use red for depression, blue's for depression. And to me, that symbolizes the entire, like, academic mindset of art.
Yeah.
And so, when you rely on, say, books or tutorials or like a teacher, they'll teach you techniques, but you have to like be careful of they'll be putting up roadblocks essentially, which are walls against your creativity. And I don't think most people realize that, and that's
True.
To some degree why a lot of art is pretty average or like generic, but there's like kind of a lot of the same themes across the board, which is partly that like you have to be able to relate to everyone. So if it's too like niche or esoteric or something that like no one's going to get it, they're like, what the hell is this weird abstract painting of triangles and squares? I don't feel anything from that. To the point where it's like you kind of wonder even if the artist knows what they're doing, and the piece itself doesn't know what it is.
Oh,
when
yeah.
you look at it, you don't feel anything but confusion, because that's how the piece feels. The piece is like, I don't know what I am.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this kind of stuff will factor into to where you're at now. So I don't know what age you are or like what your artistic background or whatever is, but kind of like sometimes it helps to have a fresh start, to forget about, like, a lot of people say you got to know the rules before you break them, but I don't think so. If you just Tarantino talked about this. He's like, if you love films, if you truly with all your heart love films and you put all your effort into it, you can't help but make a good film. Now, of course, in the stuff that I've done, I've learned so much I've only done like a handful, maybe like 6 film projects that are like short films. But each time they turn out, cause a lot of people be like, oh, that sucked. Like, why would you do a minute and 40 shot for that one thing? But to us, it was like, no, this is exactly what we wanted. We learned so much from all this. And then it'll like carry on to the next project. So like in that project, we were super passionate and into it, and we shot in like 6 different days. On the other one, it was like I wasn't feeling as passionate about it. The was only a 1-minute short film, but I kind of like, it was a really simple idea, so I figured I'd wing it. But then my friend wanted to like do the whole storyboard and all the stuff. So with collabing, that can also change too. Where like, okay, he's going like really hardcore right now. Then when I got there on set, when we're shooting, that's when I was like in my creative hardcore mode where I'm like, okay, like we're doing the shot. And then into editing, like I edited, for me, I don't like to leave things unfinished, and I have kind of a binge personality. So I edited for like 5 hours straight. I just wanted to get it out of the way as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got to then switch into that, because editing is still creative mode, which just sounds odd for film, but because it's, I guess a lot of people don't really understand how much work film takes until you get into it. And I say that from experience because I'm like, oh God, this is so much harder than I ever thought.
Yeah.
You know, and
hours
so,
and hours.
Learning to switch. So even in editing, I'm in creative mode, but then after I got to switch back to editing mode before the editing where I'm like, okay, like this doesn't look right. This is like interrupting the flow. This actually is a continuity error. This cut. And then sometimes and this is what's frustrating, and you kind of have to just accept this more as like, one, your art's never finished. It's always, because art's alive. It's like this entity, and you keep adding to it and taking from it, and it's sort of this like balance. But more so accepting that, to me, I'll feel when the piece is done is when I feel peace, if that makes sense. So yeah. I'll be like, no, this is complete. And then when you give yourself some time and maybe switch to another one. So like after the podcast last time I drew for like, an hour maybe. Mm-hmm. And then I planned out for like a half hour. I wrote just like heaps of dialogue, for Cooper McCluck. And basically my plan for it was he's stranded in limbo basically. And so it's all of these like existential thoughts and philosophical questions. And so that was fun for like 2 hours, and then I can kind of set it aside, but I can hop back to that. So like if this, when I wrote the failed pregnancy scene, that was like an hour and a half. Or when I wrote the bridge scene on my other screen, but that was like 6 hours. So it's always changing in terms of like how much effort's going into it or how much inspiration. It's all sort of dependent on like every aspect of your life, most of which you won't even realize are affecting it until later on. Because now when I look back at most of these, it's like, oh my gosh, like that was such a noob mistake. Like that was, I didn't know how to operate the camera, or like it was out of focus, or like our slider shot was like bouncing up and down, or with the art, I'm like, oh my God, I totally drew that wrong, or like you'll notice stuff. But, it can be upsetting at first. You thought it was great.
It's really interesting because the original question had to do with switching genres, and you haven't actually directly addressed that, but you've indirectly addressed it brilliantly, because what you're describing is a creative process that flows so completely. I mean, limiting yourself to a genre would be too limiting. You just go wherever you need to go with it. You don't think about it in terms of a genre or a particular set piece or something like that. You just go with where the emotion's taking you and let it turn into whatever it is. Well, we've actually gone further than what we normally do with our. I'm going to have a little editing to do to reduce it down to the podcast that I can put in the places where we have only an hour. But this has been very worthwhile. Thank you for sharing all your insights about the creative process that you go through. I know Jamie was appreciating it, and it certainly is a process that anybody should kind of take to heart for whatever it is they're doing in life, because what you're describing, in essence, is the best way to be a deliberate creator. And that is, you don't try to plan it all out in the head. You just go. You just start expressing and collecting. You talked about you're collecting your database, you're grabbing ideas, you're putting them all together. That's what a deliberate creator does. So, I mean, you described it beautifully, and I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank our listeners who are subscribing too. We like that, but who are submitting questions for us to discuss. That really helped a lot, and we really appreciate that. And we'll be doing more of these Q&As going forward, so be sure to check the schedule if you're in the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. You'll be able to see what our upcoming live events are. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, Drew, and look forward to doing this with you again next week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. Always fun. Glad to help people and learn in the process.
Absolutely. And I feel the same way. We hope that you'll join us as well next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.